I didn't even dare to dream at the time was jump-starting my career in the country music business. So this is like really coming full circle.
Bill Anderson, Whisperin Bill, the country music legend whose voice defined generations, is making headlines again. At 86, after a lifetime of triumphs, heartbreaks, and unforgettable music, shocking new revelations about his life and career are breaking across the country. What's really happening with Bill Anderson right now will leave you speechless. The voice that whispered through America. When you think of country music, certain names rise above the rest. Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, Johnny Cash. And among those giants, there's one man whose gift was unlike any other. Bill Anderson, the singer affectionately known as Whisperin Bill. Unlike others who belted out their songs with booming power, Bill did the opposite. He sang softly, almost as if he were sharing a secret with you, and that's what made millions lean in closer. His whisper wasn't weakness. It was intimacy, and America couldn't get enough. In the 1960s, when Bill's song Still soared to the top of the charts, it wasn't just a hit. It was a lifeline for people who felt heartache, longing, and quiet hope. Bill had this rare ability to make listeners feel like he understood their struggles, as though every lyric had been written just for them. From ballads about heartbreak to light-hearted tunes like Po Folks, his music carried the soul of ordinary life. But Bill Anderson wasn't just a performer. He was a storyteller. Long before he took the stage, he was a writer, penning songs that would go on to be recorded by legends like Connie Smith and George Strait. He shaped the sound of Nashville from the ground up, often working quietly behind the scenes, whispering his way into history. And his presence stretched beyond records and radio. He became a fixture at the Grand Ole Opry, always bringing humor, humility, and warmth to the stage. Fans would often say that listening to Bill was like being comforted by an old friend, gentle, steady, and real. In a world where louder often meant better, Bill Anderson proved the opposite. Sometimes the softest voice carries the strongest message. His whisper wasn't just a style, it was a symbol, a reminder that country music was never about showmanship alone, but about truth, storytelling, and heart. And for decades, Bill whispered his way straight into America's soul. The headlines that shocked fans. For decades, Bill Anderson was a steady presence in country music, a man who seemed untouchable, almost timeless. Fans thought they knew him. They thought they knew his story, his soft voice, his warm humor, his old-fashioned charm. But then came the headlines. And with them, the realization that even legends, especially legends, carry their share of heartbreak, struggles, and scandals. The first shock came years ago, when whispers spread about Anderson's personal life unraveling. His marriage, once thought to be steady, ended in divorce. For a man who had built his career writing about love, loss, and resilience, living through it in real life hit differently. Fans who had adored the gentle storyteller suddenly found themselves staring at headlines about court battles, financial strains, and family turmoil. It was a reminder that Bill wasn't just Whisperin' Bill. He was human, trying to hold together the pieces of a life that fame couldn't protect. But the headlines didn't stop there. Over the years, stories emerged about health battles, both his and those close to him. To fans, Anderson always seemed eternal, a voice that had been there through their breakups, their weddings, their lonely nights on the road. And yet, reading about his struggles made people stop in their tracks. How could the man who once gave them strength be the one silently suffering? The media, of course, played its part. Every setback became a headline. Every whisper became a rumor. Bill had always been private, but fame doesn't grant you that luxury. And so, his life was dissected, sometimes unfairly, often without mercy. Fans were left torn between heartbreak and loyalty, wanting to protect him from the glare of the spotlight, but also desperate to know the truth about their beloved icon. The most shocking part? Through it all, Bill never lashed out. He never shouted back at the tabloids. Instead, he did what he always did best. He whispered. In interviews, he spoke gently about the challenges, acknowledging pain without letting it define him. When asked about his divorce, he admitted it was one of the hardest seasons of his life. When questioned about health rumors, he would deflect with a joke or an old-fashioned story, shifting the focus away from himself and back to the music. And maybe that's why the headlines hit so hard, because they were about a man who had always carried himself with dignity. To see his name in print, surrounded by words like struggle or tragedy, felt like watching a friend suffer. Fans weren't just reading about a celebrity. They were reading about their Bill, the same man who had whispered them through lonely nights, and suddenly, he was the one who needed comfort. The shock of those headlines wasn't just about scandal or sadness. It was about realizing that Bill Anderson's story was still unfolding, and it wasn't as picture-perfect as the songs once made it seem. A legacy that will never fade. When you think about Bill Anderson today, it's easy to focus on the headlines, the struggles, and the quieter years away from the spotlight. But that would only be half the story. Because if there's one truth about Whisperin Bill, it's that his legacy is carved so deeply into the heart of country music that no personal storm, no shocking headline could ever erase it. Bill didn't just sing songs. He built a library of stories that still live on in the voices of others. Generations of artists, from Conway Twitty to George Strait to Brad Paisley, have recorded his words, carrying his storytelling into new eras. Imagine that. A man who started out whispering in the 1960s is still echoing in arenas today, through voices younger than some of his songs. That's not just success. That's immortality. What makes Bill's legacy so powerful isn't just the music, though. It's the way he carried himself. He proved you don't have to be the loudest in the room to be the most memorable. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes, the softest voices leave the deepest mark. And that lesson, his lesson, changed the way country music was written, sung, and experienced. Even now, fans write about how his songs helped them through heartbreak, through loss, through moments when they felt invisible. His voice reminded them that someone out there understood. And that bond? It doesn't fade with time. It grows stronger. Because while fame is fleeting, connection lasts forever. Bill Anderson's story reminds us that every artist is human, but the art they leave behind, that's eternal. His journey may have been filled with quiet battles and shocking headlines, but the music, the storytelling, the whisper that once pulled America closer, those will outlive us all. So when people ask, what will Bill Anderson be remembered for? The answer is simple. Not the scandals, not the struggles, but the songs, the voice, the whisper. A legacy so gentle yet so powerful that it will never, ever fade. Bill Anderson's journey reminds us of the fragility of time, but also of the power of legacy. He gave the world music that will last forever, and even in the face of struggle, his voice continues to inspire. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about the legends we love and the truths behind the headlines that shape their lives.